Okay, so we're now recording the meeting for people who are not there and will want to listen to it later. So in terms of administrivia, we have obviously the data tracker, the Git, which I should be working more on, but obviously we want to use to replace the wiki. One reason, for example, is the recording of today will be way too big to be uploaded on the wiki, and our mailing list is still the same. We got a number of new people on the list, and I think there's been activity, which was fun. That's the thing. By the way, we have to show the note well. This is an interim meeting, but we are essentially officially recorded, so we have to show the note well, and that if anybody talks and has things like IPR, should be very aware of it. And obviously, there's all the things about procedures and harassment and everything, which is important. So, and Eve and Jeffrey, you can cut me anytime, please. So, what's our status? The charter is now pretty stable. One of the big things that we did in Montreal was to have this discussion about what we needed to change. Actually, there was not that many changes. So right now it's pretty stable, and we do not intend any changes before IETF 106. Colin, who is on the call, told me that the chartering will be on Monday, November 18. So actually, there's a large chance that this will happen before our meeting, unless we have a very early meeting on the Monday, which is a short probability. But I think we are in good shape. I think this is the first.
Judging will happen at breakfast, so it should happen before the meeting.
Yeah, it will happen before the meeting. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, so maybe we could have good news at the meeting. I think we're in good shape. This is me evaluating our own work, but anyway, I think we had steady progress. I think the topic is, again, we're supposed to be a research group, and the topic is appearing in a large number of conferences and academic venues about everywhere. Ourselves, I think there's been, everyone, by the way, we've had a number of participants. We had a hackathon that was very good. So I think we're in good shape. So we're going to cross our fingers, and again, probably when we do have the meeting, we may have good news for everyone. That means that then that we'll have to be be more careful about defining the milestones, and then trying to achieve them. And I've had that experience with my other research group, but I think we'll again rely on everybody to continue the great work. So this is actually what we have as milestones right now. And this is actually what we're going to do post IETF 106 and going into 2020. I'm going to come back to this later in the meeting, but there's a lot of conferences that are going to happen in early 2020 that will have an impact on the type of work that we could include, actually. And I intend in the conferences that I will be involved with to essentially evangelize this group and make sure people are allowed, or not allowed, are allowed in. Yes, no, actually are aware of what's going on. I'm losing my English. So we're going to have new topics after 106. We had already the video that was presented in Montreal remotely. I think there's going to be a follow-up to this. And like I said, Professor Frank Fitzek is looking at virtualization and delay, and how probably adding computing inside the network could help on that. We already have Dirk and Liu's point challenges. I expect those to be updated for the next meeting. The state of the art is still, again, is essentially what Dirk is doing, and there's a lot of, again, related activity everywhere that Dirk's involved with, and there's even some work now that is planned for the H2020 of the European Union, so everybody's a little bit into that. And I would say, and I know that IEK is, I don't know if it's Ike. Anyway, is on the call, and there's an awful lot of work being done right now in industrial networks with some kind of computing in the network. So this is actually very nice, and I hope that we're going to have more documents on this. And actually, I think Alex Bassi is not on the call because he had a conflict, but I think we're going to have another draft on the use of computing in the network in large next generation agricultural networks. So April 2020, so again, this is actually going to go into this. This is Vancouver. So the case studies will be there. Again, we have the Kunsei use cases, but we're going to have more. And the XR, I'm happy to report that Lisha Shang and Alex, I never know how to pronounce his name. The Alex from ICN are going to help me on this one, and there's also interest right now in MIT Media Lab about this idea of distributing computing for augmented and distributed reality. The ecosystem and dependency, we already have that, and I know this is something that Eve has a lot of interest in. And okay, so Mr. Colin, you should know that I hope you see that here, it's not just us doing the work. I think what's great right now is there's an awful lot of people, we started things and they come in. So I think it shows us a lot of interest actually on the ecosystem redundancy, and also from the architecture. I want to touch base with Noah Zimmerman at Cambridge, because she had a number of great ideas. She doesn't seem to have a lot of cycles to write drafts, but I'm really thinking of how we could make sure that she could be more involved into this, especially also that she's involved in the DAG tool community and a lot of other prestigious places, including Cambridge. So that's actually, and then I think for next year, so it's a year from now, we want to then focus maybe a little bit more. And I think on top of this, there's another, I would say, another like dimension to this, which is the work that we're trying to do in the hackathon that I'm going to come back to, and is also trying to define, what's going on in this programmable data plane. Of course, it's a P4 for the moment, and I think this is something that I would like to have feedback either today or on the list from the people who are participating. So right now the hackathon is about P4 because this is how the way we started it. But P4 is not the only way to do computing in the network. So if people have other ideas, I wouldn't mind to still calling it or why did I say I think there shouldn't be any problem in, for the moment, still calling it P4, but eventually at one point just calling it computing in the network and see what else we can do. And I know that Eve, I'm going to talk to you for you on this, but and then you can talk when we talk about the hackathon. But Eve has, this idea that yes, we should have a common project for the group to do in this hackathon, and I think that's by next year we should be like really well into defining what's happening, especially, like I said, there's a number of research projects going around that could be like the basis for some of this implementation. Again, question, comments, I have the impression I'm alone in my living room right now, so I have the impression I'm talking to myself. Okay, so the meeting next month. So we requested it, and like I said, it may be our first official meeting, which could be cool. So the important date for everyone on the call is that by the 4th of November, all the drafts should be there. even like I would say for people who make reviews of their drafts, usually this can be either a major job or a smaller job. But I would say for people who intend to submit for the first time, make sure that you plan your work accordingly. Like I said, I don't know if there's going to be time for a lot of new drafts, but since there are going to be a lot of presentations in November, that could get more, even more drafts for the next meeting in Vancouver. And then by the 6th of November, it would be nice for people to send their agenda items. I will have a very personal request here. I am actually teaching in Singapore the week before the meeting, and so I will be really busy, first with jet lag and second with class. And so I think we're three. By then we'll know exactly what day the meeting is on, but if we need to have like all the agenda and everything, I think it would be great for the three of us to be like very much aligned on what's going to happen with the meeting before I leave on the 11th. So that means that the 6th would be really cool to have most of the agenda items so that, you know, people anyway, and also for, at least for me, I think this time it's Jeff was the lucky guy because it's less far, but I think for both me and Eve, Singapore is not exactly next door. So again, agenda items welcome. And again, please review your drafts. And for those of you who have the intention of submitting a first draft, beware that the submission tool is not exactly user-friendly. So beware that, get a good HTML editor. The hackathon, okay, so this is going on. Actually, it seems that we were very successful last time. I hadn't really realized it because I had never done one. So we're going to have it again. This time, however, compared to Montreal, where we had a company that essentially supported us, it's not going to be as good in Singapore. So the plan is, and please again tell me I'm wrong, so getting new participants. We were very lucky in Montreal that when we actually put up our sign saying, you know, we're going to do P4 programming in the network, we actually ended up having people who were there to participate in other hackathons, who were very interested by this and joined us. So getting new participants is a good thing, and getting new participants before the meeting is even a better thing. So for example, in my class at Nanyang University, I've actually asked some of the students to come on the Saturday. So my class is on the Friday all day. We're not going to do P4, but we're going to mention it's innovation and networking. So we're going to mention computing and network. And I told them ahead of time that if they wanted to participate, since it's free. So I hope some of them are going to come. This will mean that they're going to be new. So I will have all the tools that we installed in Montreal installed and help people installing them. I am not, again, a P4 programmer, but I know how to use the tool. However, and I see Emile on the list, on the list of people here, for the people who were there in Montreal, the second day in Montreal, we had started working on data filtering, and the project was very small. It was just to see if we could identify from a header a certain packet, and based on this identification, do something. So either we send the packet to a different place, either we change the header of that packet, you know, the basic stuff you can do in P4. And that also relates to a fairly known architecture and computing network, which is called netcast, where actually you do that and then you send packets that you change the destination to another processor, and most of the time it's a GPU. So this is, I would say, if we were going to build a larger set of tools for people who do computing and network, this one is fairly basic. And it has a lot of value in both industrial networks and video distribution. In industrial networks, this application is to identify packets that are, I would say, useful. It also, I would say, it's similar to stuff that's been done in autonomous networks, but autonomous vehicles. But let's talk about industrial networks since we have a draft on that. It's very useful, again, industrial networks, to identify packets that have interest. And Eve, I'm working on interest here really almost in an ICN way. So if I'm an industrial network, I'm interested to know which packets represent an alarm, which packets represent just the status of a machine or the status of a process. Then I want to be able to filter these fairly early in the networking chain, I would call it, especially if it's an alarm. So when things go bad, I want to see that really now. So the first device that these packets hit or that the information hits, I want to be able to really filter out what is, I would say, just, I'm doing fine and things are moving clearly in the way they're supposed to be, to, oh my God, some machine is failing. So this is actually an application for that data filtering. The other one is in video distribution, obviously, where it actually can see what type of video it is, what destination it is, the type of content that this video carries, and this has a lot of interest, like the XR draft that I did, but also I don't know if there's anybody from Noviflow or the University in Australia they're working with, but this also has a lot of value in video distribution. So Eve, while you were in your sabbatical.
Lovely sabbatical.
Lovely sabbatical. I'm sure lovely. I hope you had the lovely weather we had here. And I started essentially thinking about that. And that's why I kept this data filtering for the hackathon, because I think this is the basis for these one or two bigger projects that you were hinting at. And again, for the moment, it is going to be P4. But something that we can all talk about at the hackathon, and that we can talk at the meeting when we do the hackathon follow-up, is that once we are going to have these maybe, let's assume, a bunch of P4 basic libraries at one point, what else do we want to do? And this is something for the future, and I'm not expecting to have responses on Sunday, November 17, but it's just something that we can keep in the background. Again, we're not a commercial, commercial software people. We're not even, we're not doing a standard way of doing anything. But for people doing research, especially in a field that's pretty new, it's always fun that you can go somewhere and download a few libraries that will help you. And I think right now, if we look at applications that do have this vision of the edge core continuum, industrial networks and video distribution are kind of it.
And actually, I will also say that the ecosystem draft, which is at the moment entitled something along the lines of edge data discovery, but which follows on the heel of presentations both in the very first BOF COIN meeting and the ICNRG, the focus there was on, in fact, a use case we called ubiquitous, and we continue to call ubiquitous witness, which is video driven as well. So it falls in quite nicely with this notion that we're trying to build up a library of capabilities that can handle video distribution. But there's the additional facet to it, which is irrespective of whether we are searching through video data or some other continuous data stream, we're hoping that what's really happening is this model of, or at least mental model of, what does normalcy mean in some context versus anomalous behavior? And it's the anomalous behavior that triggers some kind of other activity, whether that's filtering, P4 filtering on information in the data stream or packet headers and so forth. So it's this kind of event-driven rerouting of packets or classification of packets into different categories based on whatever's going on is normal versus abnormal. And I think that kind of pattern is exactly what we see all the time in industrial and in IoT and so forth. And so that's the other part of the processing is, what triggers the data filtering.
Yeah, and
so a library for that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm doing this like with some kind of, I'm not completely not related to my own interest here, but I would say that some of the work I've been doing in the past few months on establishing a big AI-based IoT system for an industrial actually that has an industrial network. This is exactly what we're doing. We're using the packet filtering and I would say some kind of ICM-based interest definitions to classify packets and to make sure that we accumulate the right packets in the right place so that things that need to be actioned on today or now, not even today, like now or somewhere, and things that need to be actioned later because they're part of for training data for an AI system are done elsewhere. So I think that's exactly it. And the video distribution is the same thing. Some video, can be cached locally because this is something that everybody wants, and some video can be just let go and cached somewhere else because this is, I'm the only person probably in my whole neighborhood who watches French movies. So, you can think about, and again, this is that has also value, and I didn't put it there, but I think this has value also for all the AI algorithms that need valid training data. And to define what is valid training data, we also need some form of data filtering. So that's why I think that continuing the work in data filtering is a good idea. And now that you've talked, Eve, I think it would be, when I write better slides, I think it would be interesting to see that, to have maybe a follow-up to the hackathon. So, we have a little group that we've put together after Montreal that I haven't really followed up that much on, but had the people from Noviflow, had the people that participated, and we had said, maybe we just want to use it as a seed for a larger team. But I think maybe post Singapore, we could also have an ongoing development effort, probably obviously all voluntary right now because there's no budget, but that, we continue doing this so that the libraries continue on their own. So this is something that we can talk about, and another thing to talk about in Singapore when there's going to be a larger group of people. But there's also something that we could, if people agree, this is something we could start talking to on the list, because I know that at least one person who's local here and does a lot of P4 development is not on the call right now. And I guess the Noviflow people could also be interested. And there's another company in Montreal that does something similar called Kaloom. And I'm just knowing the companies in Montreal right now because it's what I did for the hackathon there, but I'm sure there's other people elsewhere. And there's you guys as well with the Barefoot acquisition. That, so I think that could be a fairly good participant of people who could be interested in some kind of open source set of libraries. So this said, I repeat, there's currently no plans for development support. I know, Jeffrey, you said that maybe you would try to find people. So helpers are welcome. People who know about P4, please move forward, step forward. And again, even if you're not a P4 person, but you're interested in data filtering and you would like to do it in another language, just come forward also, because we could also just use this. I think that the hackathon right now, as far as I'm concerned, is almost a a more of a hands-down, community-based pre-IETF meeting. So it's cool because everybody's there. There's a lot of people from the other teams that you never get to see during the week. So just come and, you know, have fun, and they feed you, which is not bad. Okay. Well, yeah, there's 3 meals on the Saturday and 2 on the Sunday. and I don't know, it was good food. And that's how to attract grad students. You feed them. That's why I told my students in Singapore, you know, you can, if you come to the hackathon, not only you can learn about a new computer language, but also you'll get fed. So usually it's good for grad students. So this is all the drafts we have. And it's a growing list. And like I said, the only new thing I have is the fact that the XR will be held by Alicia and Alex. I have already had some contacts with the team of the Coin industrial use case, and I'm supposed to help them a little bit with that because, again, of the work that I've been doing in Montreal. I expect Dirk and Jörg to update their drafts. I haven't heard from Dr. Liu, but I expect that she's going to do some work. I did talk to Dirk Trossen, which is the next one, Sarah Chandra. He could not be here this morning because he had a conflict on the west. It's actually on the west coast of the U.S., but he had a conflict. But they're still working on it, and they intend to update it. Jeffrey, maybe you can talk about yours. I talked about mine, and Eve talked about yours. So, Jeffrey, you expect to have an update on your draft?
Yes, maybe some slight modification about some new use cases, what we are working.
Okay, great. So that's for, okay, so if you want to talk about it later, that's great too. You know, I have an open discussion time, and we're going to have a lot of time because I don't think there's a lot of press. So if you want to talk about it later, yeah, in the open discussion, that's great.
Likewise, I would say that for us, we had done extensive update. I had done an extensive update by the last IETF, and although I had a kind of internal exchange with all the authors on our Edge data discovery draft, that internal discussion that was triggered by an extensive review on the mailing list, that next iteration didn't make it into the mailing list. So I think for starters, we'll do that, and then we'll make changes beyond that for a version 4 for this meeting.
Let's have you and Jeffrey to talk when we have the open discussion. Again, okay. I was hoping that maybe Dirk Trossen would be able to dial in, so we'll see what happens. And of course, with the new topics, we're probably going to have this virtualization work that may end up being in a draft. We'll talk to the team in Chicago about the video work that was done and see how we can help them submit a draft. And the same with, like I said, Noah Zimmerman. Since we have Colin on the line here, I think this is a challenge, writing drafts for people in university context, especially in what I would call very competitive universities where you don't have a lot of cycles to write that. So I think I have the intention, although I'm going to also be very busy with other university stuff, but that maybe we could see the research group as also helping people in academia get their work with us, the IRTF in general, and in our case, our own group, so that we can help them write the drafts, or actually find people to support them in writing the drafts, so that we don't let go of very, very interesting research just because people are so busy. Because, you know, when you're an adjunct professor or a non-tenured professor or an associate professor, you're so busy with all kinds of things that it's very hard to take the time to write drafts. So I think we should find ways to support them. And I think my first use cases on this are going to be, yes, Chicago and Cambridge. So let's see what happens. And
yeah, I think that makes sense. Also, don't necessarily assume that drafts are required. You know, the IETF is very focused on drafts, but the IRTF doesn't have to be.
But I would say some kind of document that we can upload. And again, it could be just maybe, that's another thing I thought about. You know, it could just be, okay, send us your latest publication, and I'm going to add it to the list of documentation, just to say, okay, so this is people who are working with us. This is people who are on our mailing list. This is the type of work they do. And if we want to have a draft, to have an informational RFC on, you know, the use of in-network computing for, like if I think about the video one, to improve resolution or actually the transmission of different levels of resolution in an image, well, let's help them do that so that the work, again, I have the impression, and I think about what's happening. Okay, I don't want to badmouth my other research group, but I would say we've actually struggled with that. There was a lot of very, very good work done, and people didn't have time to really participate. And I think we should see ourselves also as enablers of these people. Okay. So.
I think there's a few different ways these research groups can go, though. And I mean, one is you're writing down architectures and requirements and producing drafts, targeting particular use cases or particular experimental protocols or whatever it happens to be. And I think it's a very valuable way for an IRTF group to go. Another is just as an enabling forum for people to get together and talk about things. And you know, maybe people give presentations, of papers they presented elsewhere. Maybe people give presentations of early work to get some feedback.
Yeah.
Maybe the group just facilitates a bunch of people doing related work to get together and have a discussion. Some IETF people or some industry people they wouldn't normally talk to. And I think that's entirely reasonable as well. So drafts and RFCs are certainly one possible outcome, but if the research group is facilitating other work and not necessarily producing RFCs, that's also perfectly reasonable.
And again, that's why I think during the summer I had to go to Montreal a number of times for meetings, but allowed me a lot of times in airports, and so I kind of discovered all the stuff that's in the data tracker and everything. And so, yes, you know, we can just upload different types of documents. And at first I thought that you could only upload draft type documents and that every other references would have to be in either the Git or the wiki. And I discovered, no, that, you know, you just have to say, this is a document that I want there. And as long as it's some kind of PDF, it's fine. So that's exactly, I completely agree with you. And I think if you look at the meeting that we've had up to now in this proposed group, we've had a mix of people presenting drafts and also people coming to talk about, you know, what's going on in their research that relates to us, and I think it's great. And I know also a lot of people on this call probably don't or are not on the list that Colin sends comments to a lot. And I think yesterday there was also comments about, you know, having either interims or even full meetings when there is a major conference that relates to the research group. Myself, and I think probably for other people, it's kind of great to do it with the IETF because then a lot of people are there. So you get access to everybody the same week and they're all free. This said, I think there's other conferences that are kind of interesting. And again, in a field like ours that is very much in evolution and I would say in explosion right now, there could be a lot of opportunities to hold at least interims at the same time as a conference. And I would say that already next year in September, the interim meeting will be co-located with the ICN conference in Montreal because there's going to be a lot of people there who are part of our group. So I think we're really looking at things like that. So this is a new topic, and Frank will present it in, and I'm almost finished talking, so this is the end of it. Before that, I just want to go to the my last slide, and then I won't be able to, I will just stop talking. So again, we're meeting in Singapore, and this actually relates, because this is really much relates to what we just said. I think in Singapore, what would we like to have is also to provide a list of related conferences and projects. And why? Because there's a lot of it. And second, because it would allow us not only to, I would say, promote these conferences in our group, but also promote our group at these conferences. So I gave an example, and again, this is my own advertisement here. This is this workshop on flexible network data plane processing. This is going to be next spring in France, and actually it is very much about things related to COIN. There's a lot of people in the technical program committee that are also a member of this list, and I'm actually on it. I think I'm the workshop chair, if I remember. And there's going to be others. Like I said, already in ICN 2020, we intended to have a COIN interim, and there's going to be a lot of other conferences. And I think, again, as a research group, I think we have to be aware of what other people are doing. And I think we would like other people who are doing it to be also aware of us. So I think this follows on this thing that it's not only drafts and stuff that help us, but it's everything. But it doesn't mean that people who have drafts, please update them. So let's go back and open discussion. So I'm going to stop talking. And Jeffrey, you wanted to talk about your new activities, and Eve, you wanted to talk about your new activities. And I see there's a bunch of people on the call, Emile from France Telecom and Hanu. If anyone, so this is open, no slides, you know, to discussion. Oh, Noah, you're here, thank you. So it's oh, Noah wants to talk, great, take it. How do you do?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Okay, good afternoon. Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on the previous couple of slides. It would really help us, the researchers that don't usually engage with IETF, to know these pathways to engage, because the discussion on the mailing list and the first part of this meeting has suggested that the main way to engage is through drafts. Whereas, you know, most researchers will not submit such drafts, and you will not see a lot of the work going to workshops. There are some top-tier researchers that will be submitting only to SIGCOM, NSDI, and Infocom. So they won't be submitting to the targeted workshop. So it might be good to find a way to engage better, because there is, especially in this area, a lot of, it's really important to have this discussion between academia and the IETF, because academia needs this feedback as well. And I'm talking about use cases, I'm talking about data, you know, it making some of the research real. So I think that it would really help to come up with a way to engage better. It might just be, you know, when we summarize this meeting, also to send a specific separate email that is just for this purpose, you know, with the title COINRG engagement with academia, and to note there, you know, the several ways that were mentioned earlier as a mean to engage.
That is a really good idea, and yes, and I was telling you, I started, strangely enough, a few weeks ago to think about the ways to do that. So my first idea was that, again, to upload significant documents in our list of documents, so that when somebody publishes at SIGCOM or at Infocom or, you know, at NSDI, or at SIGCOM, or at Infocom, or at Infocom, or at NSDI, or at SIGCOM, or at Infocom, 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 everywhere else, or even like, you know, I sent the Dagstuhl minutes, for example, of this year. But so when we have a significant document, to put it in our documents, but yes, let's start that discussion, because I think especially for us, you know, we have Nick Svernster, does a lot of work on that, will never send us anything because he's busy doing something else. So let's start it, and let's not, well, anybody who has ideas today, this is the time. But also, I completely agree with you, Noah. Let's start a thread on the mailing list. Other people, Jeffrey, Eve, comments, presentation?
I think that,
it's Daniel from.
Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, it's Daniel from Bell. So from past experience in some of the research groups in IETF, PANRG was one, SDNRG was one, is some of the presentations that were done were not always drafts. They were actually academic research that people came in and presented as academic research rather than try to have the formalized paper. I think that was one that helps out, because translating research papers or SIGCOMM papers into I3F drafts sometimes is cumbersome for what is more about explaining the research. And that was actually helpful in those times. I do see value in some drafts like the ones which are now, because if we think about what IETF will need to be able to absorb is those kind of shifts from the standard protocols they would normally do. It's a big transition phase for IETF as it goes as we go along. Starting to see more pseudocode in drafts than actual wording. That's also something we're going to start to see more. Me, as I travel a lot of the world, I realize that it's impossible to follow everything that's going on in that kind of field. So having some, I don't know if it's the wiki page of COINRG or some others, to make sure that we have linkage to the other conferences and research papers available. Because as we go along, I think not even SIGCOMM will have everything. So it really becomes, I think it's a community effort to make sure that people can post their research or show it either through the mailing list or access to the wiki to be able to make them visible. I think that would be tremendously useful.
Thank you so much. Eve?
Yes, yeah. So this is Jeffrey. So maybe one thing we can do right now is maybe we move our reference papers to our GitHub, right? So we have in our wiki at the very beginning of this COINRG, COIN proposed RG, we have maintained a long list of reference papers, but maybe later we can maintain it at our GitHub. So that's then we can continue to add new reference papers there.
Yeah, I think there's the references in GitHub, and I think for me there's also like the major papers, and I would really like to put them in the research group or the proposed research group data tracker, the same place we put the drafts.
Yes, and another thing, as Colin said, so besides about the drafts, we can play as a forum, right? In fact, so at our previous meetings, so we have already the similar way, right? So we invite those talks, maybe not necessarily related to the existing drafts. In fact, we have put those talks in higher priorities than the existing drafts. For example, Eve and me, we didn't have opportunity to introduce ours, right? So we can further to do this. I think we can, especially at the beginning phase, at the earlier stage. Then later, maybe we can find some new architecture. We can distill from these talks. Then let's see what will happen, right?
Yes, I would agree, Jeffrey. So maintaining and moving the reference list from our wiki to the GitHub and making sure people know that that's a living document or a living list of kind of important reading materials and have presentations of and references to major papers, and when needed, to continue to prioritize the presentation of things that are not strictly drafts, because the drafts are easy to get to and can be, read and discussed on the mailing list, and continue to invite important work that might have been debuted somewhere else. That was kind of what I am summarizing here of what you said, Jeffrey. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, yes, exactly what I'm trying to express.
Yes, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's more of a discussion phase perhaps at the start, and finding ideas and understanding the problem space, and getting as many different views and viewpoints in as we can, and not perhaps worrying too much about drafts and output documents initially. And then the group may naturally coalesce on a group of documents which it will end up then publishing. So, I mean, as I said earlier, I think producing RFCs and documents is valuable, but don't worry about getting to it too early. Make sure you're getting all the inputs from a very broad community first.
So I do think that in order to get all of the right inputs, it does take different perspectives. So, for example, having folks from industry, from academia, from various government projects in different geos around the world, whether that's Industry 4.0, H2020, whatever it is, and there are probably corollaries in other countries and regions. All of that kind of percolating or synthesizing together, and we need to actively probably reach out to some of these communities. So I think using the list as a place to say, here's this interesting thing going on. What was the most interesting couple of papers that appeared at, various venues, or who's driving different programs, broader programs, and getting them in. And I think it will take work to actively help the broader community see the COINRG as a meeting place. But that's maybe what our aspiration should be for the long term.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That sounds like a good way to go.
I'm going to be the bad person, and Ike, I know that you had questions maybe to the group about, and actually goes back a little bit to what we just talked about, this whole concept of the industrial networks or anything. Do you want to add to this discussion?
Actually, I think that we have like a different understanding of what we mean with industrial networks. And yeah, that's probably also something that we will address in the update of the draft.
Okay, so what you have the floor now. What do you think it needs to be done that would meet what you want to achieve?
What exactly do you mean? So where should something need to be done?
You said that your understanding was different from what other people are thinking. So what is your understanding? Because again, we have a kind of a nice group of people here. So, maybe we can start helping you for the next version of your document, or, get ideas out before the Singapore. So I know you had some new ideas or concerns or something, so maybe you can talk about it.
Yeah, so actually we are working on two different topics right now. Regarding the industrial networks, what we actually mean with that is the really big machines, production plants building cars, for example, whereas we think that most of you guys probably mean like large data centers, for example.
Absolutely not. That's
okay.
exactly, okay, so let me rephrase. There's a lot of computing in the network that started as data centers. But I would say, at least for myself, and I think for a lot of people on this call, we are not talking data centers. We're talking industrial networks where the devices are actually in the plant, not in a data center. And when we talk about the data filtering, for example, this is not a data center functionality.
Yeah.
If I think of, well, I'm not thinking of like maybe huge machines, but I'm talking of machines. And I would say for me, the data filtering happens very, very close to where the machine is, because again, with the stuff that Eve was talking about, if we're going to do data filtering on diagnostics, for example, we don't do that in the data center. We want to do it close. So continue, because I think we all agree.
Yeah, okay. Maybe then we have a common understanding, but we just don't know it yet, or at least we don't know it yet. Anyways, so yeah, that's one. So we want to, yeah, so I guess one major problem of our draft until now is that we don't really, as you probably mentioned in Montreal, is that we don't really have the implementations, or that we don't really talk about what is currently done, or like what is really done in industry, because there we often find these closed source solutions which we do not have access to, and all our partners here, they also don't know what's really done or what's really working somewhere in industry. So that is probably the biggest challenge for us. Like, yeah, not so that we don't really, so that we can't really present what has actually already been done somewhere, if it's like closed source, yeah, solution. And I think that is also what, yeah, what I already wrote you in the email.
Okay, and so that's actually, I think this goes into this discussion that Noah raised, and I think, again, I think this shows how important it is, this thread of what can we do to help academics. And so I think in your case, what you need is the support of a real industry and to academia. But I think also this is something that is beyond us. I think this is also something that could be discussed, could be a topic for the IRSG dinner in Singapore, because I think it's something that all the groups have to face. But since we started it, let's deal with it in our group and see if we can actually distill something that will be useful for the others. But again,
well, I'd like to underscore that you know, since you have gone to the trouble of writing this draft, I think it would be great to capture in the draft itself, if you haven't already, this kind of challenge, and that it's an appeal to those in the working group. Even if you could have access to one person, let alone maybe 2 or 3 different people who represent various companies that have direct hands-on experience, that in some manner of anonymity can at least share at a high level some of the information you need. So I would say if we could articulate it and make a more formal request out of it as part of the problem statement to this area for COINRG, that might be a first step. And that we help with the solicitation of others who can help solve the problem.
Yeah,
I don't know if we'll get any answers, but capture it as, you know, and document it as needed to move this draft forward?
Yeah, I think to start, okay, like Noah said, let's start a trend on our research group or proposed research group still, because we are facing a situation that could be different from other groups. At the same time that we are looking at that whole research, and I would say industrial networks are just one part of it, but I would say let's focus on that one for 1 second. That we are looking at how the research about the more and more, they call it Industry 4.0, Agriculture 4.0, Vehicle 4.0, whatever is called 4.0 right now. So there's a lot of research, but at the same time, there's a lot of pressure from companies who want to get into who want to implement solutions. So I think we have this tussle in our group in particular between industry wanting to have solutions and us researchers still researching. And I think to communicate, or to have these two groups communicate, and to essentially, yes, start this trend of how we can help academia, but at the same time it will help other people, the industry, and do it for our group. So with our problems, it may be different in other groups. I can see that more, like for example, network coding has a completely different set of problems. So I think right now we're not there. But let's do it for our group, and if something out of our group is useful for the others, because a lot of people on this call are not just members of this research group, but also do IETF and do other research groups. So if something out of our group comes out that is useful, then it will be. But I think it will be useful for us, as you said, Yves, to us focus on what we want to achieve and have a better view of what the research field is and how all of this is going to evolve. So I think it's a really good way of starting. Nobody has an opinion? Well, we have somebody from industry here who hasn't talked. Hanu, what are your, from your point of view, what do you see? Because you're a researcher in industry, so you have both hats. So how do you feel about this?
Well, can you hear me? I think you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes. So the closest standardization bodies related to its computing that I'm following is ETSI and 3GPP, where there is a lot of momentum at the moment on defining these details, and they're going already in quite deep in the system and protocol stacks, defining how do you use DNS in discovering data and servers and things like that. So I'm just.
But who is they? What groups are you talking about?
I'm talking about 3GPP, SA2, SA6, for instance.
Got it. Okay.
And then ETSI MEC, of course, and ETSI NFE. Those are the primary working groups.
What was the group inside of 3GPP?
In 3GPP, SA6 and SA2.
SA6, the study group, and SA2. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes. But SA6 is on the application level, whereas this SA2 is on the infrastructure level.
Thank you.
They have their own views on the architectures, and of course, starting from what is the mobile network and trying to shoehorn the ETSI architecture into that.
Yeah. I think we have a more, I would say, organic way of looking at it. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, I think we need to know what other people are doing. But again, we're not trying to do a standardization, so
right.
It doesn't really matter. I know there's work in ITU, for example, that could be related. But again, they're looking at standardization, and we're not.
Right.
But from your industrial point of view, is there plans to implement any of this, or is just for the moment participating in architecture groups and something?
Surely we are planning to implement and we are offering this edge computing, so operators as well as industries are interested in investigating this.
Okay.
These products and gain the benefits of having this data processing close to where things happen.
Anybody else has? I see names that I don't know if I've ever seen on this list again, but that's fine.
Well, who's hiding behind Timu?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Who is Timu?
Is that Technical University Munich?
Yeah, it has to be mentioned Technical University, but who's Timu?
Is that you, Jörg?
Yeah, I'm from Jörg's group.
Okay.
So I'm just listening in, trying to see what is going on.
Okay. Well, say hello to Jörg.
Well.
There's no. Yeah. Okay. So again, both Jeffrey and Eve, you had updates on your drafts. You want to talk about it now? We have a ton of time, so.
Okay, I try to keep this short. So, so some of you may know I have. I'm interested both in edge computing and in data center, but current draft is mainly focused on the data center use case. And recently we have investigated some other use cases. So besides those already in current draft, for example, in network ordering or some others, so related to distributed database. So how in-network computing can help to improve the performance of distributed database inside the data center. That's what I'm recently investigating. This one thing. And secondly is that we have some implementation on proof of concept for in-network computing for AI training. So in that implementation, we envisioned some potential improvement about the transport protocols. So this is probably related to Ike's email in our list. So Ike, you mentioned about some transport protocols in network computing in industrial networks. So probably we can work together, explore in that topic. So last week I was in the national holiday, so I haven't opportunity to respond to the mailing list, but we can discuss later.
Yeah, it would be great if you could put it on the mailing list too, so that there's. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So another thing. So in long term, I'm thinking some of our experience in the data center, for example, for the distributed database, probably can be applicable as well to the computing use case. Some people are arguing about geographic distributed database among these implemented in the edge computing. That's a potential interesting topic in future, in near future for me. So maybe I will also explore that topic later. If anyone have the same interest, maybe you can contact me and discuss. And for the details, maybe I need some time to capture in my draft. Okay, so that's all.
Again, like we just discussed, it doesn't have to be a draft if you just want to start a
Yeah.
or just make a presentation. It's fine. Eve, you had also a take?
Yeah, we had gotten some extensive comments from Dave Aran on the mailing list, and I believe that I answered in kind. Had some extensive response to him on each of the points that he made about our draft. Now, our draft is focused essentially on edge data discovery, and the reason why that's related to COINRG is it goes along these lines. The thinking is that, you know, Internet of Things and devices, particularly sensors and monitoring elements at the very edges of the network, are creating a lot of data, and it may, over its lifetime, reside at the very edges of the network. But it's more likely that that data, you know, at least initially the model was that that data was going to be sent back to the cloud. But as more and more devices are either continuously generating data or are high volume data, such as cameras, which are sort of the, if you look at the kinds of devices that are getting added to the Internet of Things, you know, cameras just are a huge percentage of those things. They're generating vast amounts of data. There's just no way that that data is going to be sent back to the cloud, certainly not in its original format. So if nothing else, some of the compute that's happening at the edges of the network is going to be transformational, transcoding, and so forth, compression, subsampling, all of those sort of, how do I, you know, fit this data across the pipe? But then more sophisticated computations, because after all, pointing a camera at something that is mostly uninteresting, you know, isn't useful to send that data back somewhere. It's only in the event of something, as we said earlier, anomalous or interesting or unique or rare, or all of those kinds of adjectives that you could assign to the data within the video streams. And so what we're seeing is this phenomenon that, yes, there's a lot of data being created around the network in any place imaginable, in any place that you could put a sensor or a monitor or even a computer or camera. But additionally, each time we go through one of these computations or transformations, we are also generating new data. So data begets new data. And it leads to the sprinkling of data kind of everywhere throughout our physical environment. And we may actually want to keep track of it if it becomes too expensive to send it back to somewhere more archival. And that, so that's kind of the problem of, or the use case that we're imagining, or the scenarios that arise in our current networks with these vast numbers of devices connecting and all of those devices generating data. So I would say that the most interesting comment that we received back was one that focused on, you know, the question, why just focus on data discovery as a side effect of computation on data? Why not the whole life cycle of data stewardship or data management? And so that's the big to-do that is facing us, is should we somehow reorient this draft to comprehend the data life cycle and talk about the requisite problems that are related to compute in the network for each of these stages, because they are related. It's hard to separate them. So, and as you can imagine, that's a big problem to tackle. So we, instead of tackling that problem, we answered pretty much all of the other questions, of which there were many. And that was what resulted in draft number 3. We didn't post those to the list. I posted them to the co-authors, but we'll send all of that to the list for people to consume, and then raise this bigger question about well, one, is this an interesting enough problem for the COINRG group? Is this the right group to have the discussion in about the whole data life cycle of all these devices attached at the edges of the network that do have a compute aspect to them, but not in every single part of the life cycle of the data. So that's where we are with our draft. I think this, it still needs some, we need to do diligence to really capture the proper references for completeness. And we're still trying to frame, what's the problem we're tackling and is it going to have this broader scope? And I don't know how many people actually have looked at it or have thought about this problem, but I would absolutely welcome your feedback as we continue to evolve it. It's still pretty drafty, if you ask me, even though it's at version 3.
And actually, even if it goes beyond this research group or this still proposed research group, I think if you look at ICN, if you look at us in network coding, if you look at even the network management people, there are a lot of documents or drafts or whatever that cover more than one research group, and it's fine. And okay. I think, for example, if I see what's happening in ICN for the moment, all the compute first networking, and even what's happening in distributed, which looks at the encryption, there's a lot of things that we are overlapping with them, and it's fine. And I think there's a lot of people who participate in all the groups, and I see this as positive, not as something that's bad. So if you're, I think what you're talking about, yes, has impact for us, but is also most likely related to what's in I would say the security aspects is related to what is happening in distributed, and it could be also related to some stuff that's happening in the IETF, and frankly, it's fine. I think it's great.
Okay. And it certainly is something that emerged from, as I said, a presentation initially in the ICN working group, because of course, if you've got distributed data and you're trying to discover it, or place it somewhere after compute on it, all of the naming issues and the metadata issues are closely aligned with ICN concerns. ICN could be one way to solve the data discovery problem, discovery and placement, because it's, on the one hand, discovery of data is interesting because it is, to feed the computations, our data may be scattered and we may need to marshal it. But there's the similar problem that after the computation, where do you place the data?
Yeah.
And over time, even the problem, something that we've looked at Intel quite a bit, is the almost autonomous migration of data, the need for that as we begin to, not just begin to, continue to populate the network with devices that are continuously streaming, whether it's, high resolution volumetric data, or whether it's low level event data. It's continuous, and over time, devices have a resource limit, and you need to decide what to do with that data, to expire it, to transform it into some other format, or migrate it elsewhere. And so, again, compute plays a role in all of those decisions about the overall longevity and whereabouts of the data.
Yeah, and again, when I was talking about the hackathon and the data filtering, for example, and some of the architectures I've seen, if you think about how do you define which packets are interesting or not, and essentially the ICN interest and data are very much one way of doing that. So again, I think all these things overlap one another, and it's great. We haven't heard from many other people who are still on the call. Xavier Defoy, which group are you part of? What's your interest in our work? Aha, I put people on In French, we call it sur la sellette. Okay, so maybe Xavier is just listening.
Yes, hello.
Here he comes. Here he comes.
Yeah, so
Hi.
Xavier, we have never seen your name on any list. Oh,
I have. He's very involved.
Okay, well, so what is your interest in our work, and what do you think you can collaborate with or bring to the table?
So basically, we're involved in some. I'm working with some other people that you may know better, like Dirk Trossen, and we're not working directly together, but we're in the same organization.
Okay, so Interdigital.
Interdigital, yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
basically, I'm interested in how edge computing would be used in 5G networks, for example. So, related to the 3GPP activity and ETSI MEC, for example.
Okay.
Basically, kind of the yeah.
Merci.
And in case you didn't know, Xavier is one of the folks who was driving the draft that appeared in the thing-to-thing working group on IoT and Edge.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I know Dirk obviously better because I've worked with him before, but yeah, it's great to have you. Merci.
Yeah, yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm looking to have some kind of a large group of francophones here so we can switch the meetings. I don't think it will ever happen.
Goodness.
I don't think it will ever happen. Anyway, okay. Anybody else? I think we did. I think
we have not heard from Dong today, have we?
We haven't heard from Dong, so we still have to hear from Dong.
We'll put you on the spot.
And I think we're putting people on the spot, but yeah, that's the goal of these interims. It's to hear what people have to say and what they can contribute and things. So Dong, do you have any comments on what happened or something else?
You're very quiet still.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Loudly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm actually working with Jeffrey. We are the same we are the same group in Huawei.
Okay.
So I'm new to these projects, research group. So probably later when I got the fully understanding of the entire project, hopefully I can contribute to this research program.
Well, welcome. And yeah, every contribution is great, and I think also that's another of my, baby projects is I think these research groups are also very good to as some kind of an education tool, like people who don't know about the technology could also learn about it. I think that's part of the evangelism of the group, but I think this is also a role in research. So thank you and welcome. Anybody else who hasn't talked and has something to say or would like to add something? Yes, no, maybe. I
would like to hear who is the core working group. Is that?
Yes, that's what I was thinking. The other people we haven't heard of is who
are you?
Yeah, hi, this is Carsten. This is an artifact of the IETF WebEx. When you are logged in as somebody at the WebEx, you no longer can join meetings as a human. You only can join them as whoever you are logged in.
I know. I'm COINRG today, and also I don't have a name. Yeah. So hello. Well, that's fine. To know that it's you, so we know that somebody we know.
Yeah, so those who don't know me, I'm mostly lurking because in the end, in constrained networks, in particular in constrained node networks, we are really looking for friends in the network, for places to offload things to, not just processing, but also in particular storage and custody. So there are a lot of IoT-related issues here, and we may want to pick them up both in the core working group and in the Think-to-Thing research group.
Cool.
And for those of you who may not have been following COINRG since its inception, it really did start in Thing-to-Thing, and it sort of then broke off. So so the lineage is, we're very closely aligned with Thing-to-Thing.
Yeah, I think it's an offspring of Thing-to-Thing, ICN, and a few other things. But yeah, I agree. And thank you for being here. Okay, well, I don't have anything else. But I'm not. We're 3 people here. So any of you other 2 of the GEM have something to say?
No,
the
not
GEM
from
being
my
Jeffrey,
side.
Eve. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we've started calling ourselves GEM. This is Jeffrey, Eve, and Marie-José. So I think I've spoken plenty. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so I've put back the next meeting. So I think we're going to have a short meeting, but it's fine. I think we raised good things today, so I'm really happy we had this. Maybe we should have had it before, but it's fine. So let's meet. So in our action item, Eve, so since you're
taking
notes, I think the action item is starting a thread about how we can help academia in terms of participating, either shepherding documents, allowing more discussion. We can have more, maybe smaller group discussions when necessary, whatever. So let's start the thread on the mailing list. I will also look at creating in the GitHub, moving a lot of the references there, but also in the document in the data tracker to load a number of papers from people who are the participants right now, and to reach out to other researchers that I know if they have anything they could contribute. So that's my action item. I think also another
facet of that is, I don't know, it's not, maybe not the data tracker, but it's probably the GitHub having a corner of that which really tracks not just posting things on the email list about events that are happening that are in this area, but also listing the conferences across different organizations that fall within striking distance of this topic.
Yeah, and that's what I said. This is what I think we should create that. I wanted to start doing it for Singapore, but we can start anytime. So I think that's also part of everybody's action item. I think everybody's action item is wherever, if you have a draft, please make sure that it's updated on time. Please send us agenda items for Singapore. If you want to participate remotely, it's fine. I actually think we should use more, we should reduce our carbon footprint and use even more of the remote participation tools. So if you want to participate remotely, it's fine. Just also tell us you are, and ideas for presentations. And agenda items, again, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like it earlier than later since I'm teaching the week before. And yeah, so we'll probably all see ourselves in about, I would say, 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And thank you extremely much for being here this morning, this afternoon, tonight. People from the West Coast, you can go back to sleep, I guess. Or actually get a very strong coffee to stay awake the rest of the day. We'll see you all hopefully, or actually hear from you in Singapore. Thank you so very much. And Colin, since we have stuff to talk, you can stay on the call.
Sure, we should drop onto the Zoom call or call me.
I have a Zoom that I can just send you the link, so I'll do that.
Okay.
Just stand
up. And Daniel Bernier, may I request that you send me an email about your plans to be on the West Coast? That would be terrific.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.